"Easy, cowboy, you'll break my back," cried the Apache woman as he treated her. The morning sun was just beginning to climb over the horizon, painting the vast open land with shades of gold and orange. Dust swirled gently around the wooden fences of the ranch, giving the place a soft, warm glow. The quiet of the morning was broken only by the distant sound of hooves and the occasional crowing of a rooster. On this calm morning, a woman was walking toward the ranch, her steps measured and cautious. She moved with a quiet grace, the kind that comes from years of living close to the land and learning to respect it. Her clothes were simple but sturdy, showing that she was no stranger to hard work. Beck, her eyes, alert and bright, scanned the area as she approached the corral, taking in every detail. Bay. She was from the Apache community nearby, a woman who had grown up learning the ways of her people. Strength, resilience, and a deep respect for the animals that shared the land with them. Today, she had come to check on the horses her tribe had leased to the ranch. Her heart was always with the animals, and she took her responsibility seriously. As she walked closer, she noticed one horse standing awkwardly, shifting its weight and clearly uncomfortable. Her stomach tightened with worry. The horse's leg seemed injured, and she knew from experience that such injuries, if not treated quickly, could become serious. She approached slowly, speaking softly to the horse, trying to calm it. "Easy, easy," she whispered, her voice low and soothing. But the horse flinched and moved away slightly, a reminder that fear often made pain worse. She knelt beside it, examining the leg carefully. The injury wasn't severe, but it was enough to make the horse limp and wary. She sighed, her mind racing with possible ways to help. Her hands were steady, but the horse's size and strength made it difficult for her to handle alone. It was at that moment that he appeared. He was tall and broad-shouldered, moving with a confidence that spoke of years spent working with horses. His clothes were simple but practical, the kind a rancher wore, and his hands were calloused and strong.
He watched her for a moment, not intruding, but his eyes were sharp and observant.
He could tell she was capable, but he also knew that sometimes even the strongest hands needed a little help when dealing with a frightened animal. "Need a hand?" he asked, his voice calm and steady. The woman looked up, startled, and instinctively took a small step back. She didn't know this man, and the instinct to be cautious was strong. I think I can manage," she said, her voice polite but firm. She wasn't used to asking for help, and she had learned that relying on others could sometimes bring more trouble than relief. He smiled faintly, a small, reassuring gesture. "I've worked with horses a long time. Let me just take a look." "I won't hurt him." She hesitated, glancing at the horse and then back at him. There was something in his presence that made her pause, a mix of confidence and gentleness. Finally, she nodded, though her eyes remained wary. "All right, but easy, cowboy," she warned, her voice carrying both caution and humor. "You'll break my back if you're too rough." He chuckled softly, a low, pleasant sound that made her tense shoulders relax just a little. "Becked. I promise. I know my strength." "I'll be careful." He stepped closer, moving with a practiced ease that immediately showed he was skilled. He didn't rush or force the horse. Instead, he allowed it space, speaking in quiet tones that were calm but firm. The horse's ears twitched, its body relaxing slightly as it felt his careful presence. Back. The woman watched closely, her hand still hovering near the animal, ready to intervene if necessary. As he worked, he explained what he was doing. "See, the first thing is to make him trust you. If he's tense, Any movement can hurt him more. We move slowly, and we let him feel that nothing bad is going to happen. His words were simple, but they carried wisdom born from experience. The woman found herself listening carefully, fascinated by the way he handled the horse. He used his strength not to overpower, but to guide and protect. She had seen many people try to help animals before, but few had done it with such respect and skill. Slowly, her initial wariness began to fade, replaced by a cautious admiration. She reached out, her hand brushing against the horse's neck, feeling the warmth of its body and the tension slowly melting away under his careful touch. You really know what you're doing," she said softly, unable to hide the surprise in her voice. He looked up at her, his eyes meeting hers. "It's all about patience, preparation, and respect. The horse feels fear just like we do."
"You can't force him. You have to show him he's safe." There was a quiet moment between them, a shared understanding that went beyond words.
She realized that this man, a stranger just moments ago, was someone who respected life and strength in all its forms. And he, in turn, seemed to recognize her own courage and determination, even in the way she had approached the horse without hesitation. The horse shifted again, testing the situation, and the cowboy adjusted his grip gently. "There we go." "Bess. See? Not so bad," he said, his voice calm and reassuring. The woman nodded, feeling a sense of relief as the horse's legs stopped trembling. Hours seemed to pass in what felt like minutes. The morning sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the corral. They worked together quietly, a rhythm forming between them. Best, she would hold the horse's head, speaking softly while he attended to the injured leg, carefully wrapping and cleaning it. There was no rush, only a steady, deliberate effort to heal and protect. At one point, the horse let out a soft whinny and she laughed, a sound of pure relief and happiness. "I think he likes you more than me," she said, teasing lightly, though there was genuine gratitude in her voice.
He smiled, a small but genuine expression.
"Maybe. But you're the one who knows him best. I'm just helping him remember that he's safe." By the time the sun was high in the sky, the horse was calmer, its injury treated and its trust slowly restored.
"Bray." The woman looked at him, her eyes reflecting both admiration and newfound respect.
"Thank you," she said simply, though her tone carried the weight of sincerity.
"I didn't think anyone could handle him like that." He shrugged modestly, a small smile playing on his lips. "Sometimes it just takes a little patience and a lot of respect." For a moment, they stood in silence, the connection between them, unspoken but powerful. Both had come into the morning expecting a routine check on an animal, but they were leaving with something more, a mutual understanding that strength was not just in muscles but in patience, kindness, and trust. As she prepared to leave, the woman glanced back at him, a thoughtful look in her eyes. "Maybe I judged you too quickly," she admitted softly. He nodded, acknowledging the admission without saying more. There was no need. The trust had been built quietly, through actions, not words. As she walked away, the horse following behind her, she realized that mornings like these were rare. Bare, in the way life sometimes placed strangers in your path and taught you lessons you weren't expecting.
She smiled to herself, a gentle warmth spreading through her chest.
Today had been more than just about helping a horse. It had been about learning that trust could be found in unexpected places, and that even the strongest people sometimes needed help. And somewhere in the back of her mind, she couldn't help but think about the cowboy, tall and quiet, working patiently under the sun. There was something about him that lingered in her thoughts, not just his skill, but his presence. Calm, steady and unassuming, yet undeniably strong. The morning ended quietly, the ranch returning to its usual rhythm of work and chores. But for the woman, something had shifted. A small, subtle change had occurred in the way she viewed others and the way she understood strength. She had faced a challenge, asked for help, and found someone who could meet her in that moment without judgment or force. And for the cowboy, the day had left a mark as well. In helping her, he had not only cared for a horse, but had also met a person whose courage and resilience reminded him of the value of patience and respect. The encounter, simple as it seemed, carried a quiet lesson that would stay with him long after the morning ended. As the sun climbed higher and the day moved forward, both returned to their separate lives, carrying with them the memory of a morning where trust had been tested, respect had been earned, and a small bond had quietly formed, a bond that neither of them would forget. The afternoon sun hung high in the sky, casting long shadows across the dusty corral. The wind had softened, leaving the ranch bathed in warmth and quiet. After the morning's events, the Apache woman lingered near the corral, watching the cowboy work with a calm precision. He moved around the horse with ease, his hands steady and confident. The horse, which had been tense and wary just hours ago, now stood almost still, its breathing slower and more relaxed. She leaned against the wooden fence, arms crossed, her eyes following every careful movement. Despite her initial wariness, she couldn't deny the admiration growing in her chest. The cowboy's patience was remarkable, his respect for the animal clear in every gesture. She had expected someone rough, maybe even careless, but he had surprised her completely. There was a gentle strength in the way he worked, a skill that only came from years of experience. "You've done this before, haven't you?" she asked softly, unable to hide her curiosity. He looked up from the horse, catching her gaze, and nodded with a small smile. "Many times. Horses don't lie. They tell you everything you need to know if you just pay attention." She tilted her head, thinking about his words. He seemed to understand them in a way she had not expected. Horses were intuitive creatures, yes, but to work with them so skillfully required more than knowledge. It required patience, respect, and a kind of empathy that was rare.
"I never realized how much you had to notice," she said quietly, stepping closer to the fence.
"I thought it was just about handling them, keeping them in line." He shook his head. "It's never about control."
Control makes them fight you. Understanding makes them trust you. She watched him adjust the horse's injured leg, moving slowly so that the animal barely flinched. She had grown up around animals, learning from her elders how to care for them, but there was something different in the way he approached the horse. It wasn't just technique. It was respect. She felt a twinge of admiration mixed with a strange curiosity about the man himself. "You seem calm," she said, choosing her words carefully. "Even with an animal that's scared and hurting, you don't rush." "Rushing doesn't solve anything," he replied simply. "Patience is more powerful than strength most of the time." His words made her pause. They weren't just about horses, she realized. They could apply to people as well. She wondered how many times he had used that patience in his own life, facing challenges she could only guess at. He seemed grounded, steady, a man who had learned to face difficulties without letting them shake him. For the next hour, they worked in silence, their movements carefully coordinated without needing to speak. She held the horse's head, speaking softly, while he attended to the leg, wrapping it securely and gently cleaning away dirt and small cuts. There was a rhythm to their actions, a quiet cooperation that felt almost natural. She noticed how he would glance at her occasionally, as if checking to make sure she was comfortable, yet never intruding. At one point, the horse shied slightly at a sudden noise in the distance, but her heart jumped, and she instinctively stepped closer to steady it. He caught her eye and gave her a small nod. "Let him move if he needs to. Don't force him," he said. His calm voice soothed both the horse and her nerves. She realized she was learning from him, even without meaning to. "You're very careful," she said softly, almost to herself. "I didn't expect that." "Carefulness comes with respect," he replied, looking down at the horse. "If you respect something, you take your time. You don't force it." There was a quiet moment between them, the kind that spoke louder than words, breath. She realized that this man, a stranger just hours ago, had earned a small measure of her trust. He hadn't demanded it, hadn't expected it. He had simply shown through his actions that he was worthy. Bay. And in that moment she felt a strange warmth, a recognition of someone who understood the balance of strength and gentleness. As they worked, the sun moved slowly across the sky. Birds circled above, and a soft breeze rustled the leaves in the nearby trees. She noticed small details she hadn't before, the way his hands moved with care, the way he spoke to the horse in a calm, even tone, the way he seemed aware of her presence without needing to comment on it. Each small gesture added to the sense of trust that had begun to form between them. She found herself asking questions, curious about his life and experience. "Have you always worked with horses?" she asked. "Most of my life," he replied. "It's not just work, it's a connection. You learn patience, respect, and a little humility along the way. Horses don't care about your title or pride. They respond to your heart." She nodded slowly, absorbing his words. There was truth in them, and she felt a sense of understanding growing inside her. She had spent her life learning similar lessons from her own experiences, but hearing them reflected in someone else's life gave them a new meaning. "You make it seem easy," she said with a small laugh, though it was tinged with awe. "But I know it's not." He smiled faintly, not arrogantly, just with quiet acknowledgement. "It's never easy. But when you respect the animal and take the time to understand, it becomes more possible." Psst. As the afternoon wore on, she realized how much she had underestimated him. The man who had seemed so imposing at first, so strong and capable, was also patient and gentle. He balanced strength with kindness, confidence with humility. It was a rare combination, and she found herself drawn to it, even as she reminded herself to stay cautious. At one point she laughed quietly, shaking her head. "I warned you this morning not to break my back," she said, teasing, though her voice carried genuine relief. "Beck, but you've managed just fine." He laughed too, a warm, soft sound that made her smile. "I told you. Careful hands," he said simply. You'd be surprised what careful hands can do. The horse, now calm and almost playful, flicked its ears and nudged her gently. She reached out to stroke its neck, feeling a deep sense of relief. The tension of the morning had faded, replaced by a quiet satisfaction. They had worked together side by side, and something in that shared effort had created a bond. Subtle, unspoken, but real. She realized then that the day had already taught her more than she had expected. It wasn't just about the horse. It was about trust, patience, and learning to let someone in, even if only in small ways. She had faced the situation alone at first, proud and independent, but accepting help had been the wiser choice. And in doing so, she had discovered a rare quality in someone else: respect, humility, and quiet strength. As the sun began its slow descent toward the horizon, she felt a soft warmth in her chest. She had come to the ranch with a simple task: expecting a routine morning, and yet the experience had been far richer. She had met someone who had earned her trust, and in turn she had shown a willingness to learn and accept help. "Thank you," she said again, softly as she stood back and watched the cowboy finish tending to the horse. Her words were simple, but they carried sincerity and gratitude. He looked up at her, eyes steady and calm. "Pitt, you don't have to thank me. We helped him together. That's what matters." She nodded, realizing the truth in his words. It wasn't about who did more or who deserved credit. It was about the shared effort, the partnership formed through patience and understanding. As she prepared to leave, she glanced once more at the horse, now standing confidently, its leg healed and its spirit restored. Then she looked at the cowboy, a thought lingering in her mind. Today had been more than just about treating an animal. It had been about human connection, about learning that trust could be given and earned quietly, without words or fanfare. She stepped toward the gate, turning back once to offer a final smile. He returned it, a small, knowing gesture that spoke of mutual respect and understanding. The afternoon sun cast long shadows, and the ranch seemed quieter now, peaceful, almost reflective. Walking away, she felt lighter, more aware of the lessons the day had offered. She had come to check on a horse and had left with a deeper understanding of patience, trust, and the quiet strength of someone who could meet her where she was. And in the back of her mind, she couldn't help but think that the bond they had formed today, small as it was, would linger in her thoughts for a long time. The day ended with a quiet sense of accomplishment. The horse was safe and calm. The woman had gained a new perspective, and the cowboy had shown that true strength was more than muscle. It was heart, patience, and respect. It had been a day of lessons, small victories, and subtle connections, leaving both of them changed in ways they hadn't anticipated. And as the sun finally dipped behind the distant hills, the woman walked back toward her home, carrying with her the quiet knowledge that sometimes trust and understanding could be found in the most unexpected places, and that even strangers could leave a lasting impact on one's life. The evening settled over the ranch like a soft blanket, painting the sky in shades of pink and purple. The air was cooler now, carrying the faint scent of the desert and the horses. After the long day of tending to the injured horse, the Apache woman stayed nearby, unwilling to leave just yet. She found herself drawn to the corral where the cowboy was finishing the last preparations before nightfall. He moved with the same calm confidence she had noticed that morning, checking the horses, brushing them gently, and making sure each one was comfortable. She leaned against the fence again, arms crossed loosely, watching him. There was a quiet rhythm to his actions, almost meditative. She felt a strange mix of curiosity and admiration as she observed him. Despite his large frame and strong hands, every movement was careful, deliberate, and precise. He treated the horses as equals, not as creatures to control. The respect he showed was clear, and had left her thinking about the lessons she had learned from her own life, lessons her elders had taught her about patience, understanding, and strength. He looked up and caught her gaze. A small smile appeared on his face, soft and unassuming, and she felt a warmth she could not explain. It was a quiet acknowledgement, a recognition of her presence without any expectation. Psst. She realized that this simple gesture carried weight. It was a rare kind of understanding, the kind that could not be forced but had to be earned. "Still watching?" he asked gently, not as a challenge but as a question. She nodded, a small smile on her lips. "I can't help it. You work differently than anyone I've seen. You're careful." I didn't expect that. He chuckled softly, the sound warm and easy. Most people don't notice the difference. They see the strength, but not the patience that comes with it. She considered his words, realizing how true they were. It was easy to notice his size and his skill, but the patience, the thoughtfulness behind every action was harder to see. But yet, that was what made him effective, what made the horse trust him so completely. "I've seen people rush," she said quietly, her voice thoughtful. "Inspiration. They think strength alone will solve everything, but it doesn't. It only makes fear worse."
Exactly, he said, nodding.
Strength is useless without understanding, and patience is what makes all the difference. For a long moment they stood in silence, watching the horses as they grazed peacefully. The air was filled with a quiet stillness, broken only by the soft rustle of leaves and the distant call of a bird returning to its nest. There was a sense of calm between them, a connection that did not need words. She realized that she was learning from him, not just about horses, but about life, about the value of patience, respect, and quiet strength. She decided to step closer, her curiosity growing. "Can I ask you something?" she said, her voice careful. "Of course," he replied, looking at her with genuine interest. "Bear, how did you learn to be like this? So calm, so patient." Bay.
Did someone teach you, or is it just experience? He paused, considering her question.
"A little of both," he said finally. "I've worked with horses since I was a boy. They teach you things you can't learn anywhere else. Patience, respect, humility. You learn to read them, to understand what they need without forcing it. And over time, you start to apply the same lessons to people too." Narration. She listened closely, fascinated. There was wisdom in his words, a life lived with intention and care. She had grown up learning similar lessons from her own culture and family, but hearing them reflected in someone else's experience gave them new depth. It made her think about her own life, the choices she had made, and the strength she had built through years of self-reliance. "You make it sound easy," she said with a small laugh, though she knew it wasn't. "But I know it's not," he smiled faintly, acknowledging the truth of her words. "It's not, but the more you practice, the more it becomes part of you." You learn to respond, not react. You learn to listen, not just hear. And you learn to respect the trust someone, or something, places in you. There was something in the way he spoke, a quiet honesty that made her feel at ease. She realized that she had spent so much of her life relying solely on herself, trusting only her own hands and judgment. But today had shown her that letting someone in, even in small ways, could be a strength rather than a weakness. As the sun continued its descent, he finished checking the last of the horses and turned to her. "Want to see something?" he asked, a hint of a smile in his voice. "Bass." She tilted her head, intrigued. "What?" He gestured toward a narrow path leading to a small hill near the corral. "I want to show you how to calm a horse completely, even when it's nervous. It's about trust, not force." "Bad. And I think you'll find it interesting." She hesitated for only a moment before nodding. "All right. Show me." They walked together toward the path, the horse following closely behind. He moved with ease, his hands gentle, his voice low and reassuring. "Bad." She noticed how he never forced the animal, how he let it respond in its own time. And as she observed, she began to understand the depth of his skill, not just physical skill. He knew how to connect, how to earn trust, and how to respect boundaries. He guided her through the process, demonstrating each step carefully. "See, it's not about control," he explained. "It's about understanding. Let the horse know you're not a threat. Let it feel safe. That's when it truly listens. She watched intently, mimicking his actions with the same care he had shown. The horse responded, gradually becoming calmer, more relaxed. She felt a sense of accomplishment and pride as she realized she was learning from him. And not just about the horse, but about trust, patience, and communication. As the evening progressed, they sat on a fallen log near the hill, the horse grazing nearby. The sky had turned a deep shade of purple, stars beginning to appear one by one. There was a quiet comfort in the air, a sense of shared understanding that had grown over the course of the day.
"You've taught me more than I expected today," she said softly, glancing at him.
Pat. Not just about horses, but about patience and trust and understanding. I didn't realize how much I needed that lesson. Bear.
He looked at her, his eyes calm and steady. Sometimes we learn lessons when we least expect them.
And sometimes it takes a challenge to see what we didn't know we were missing.
She smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest.
There was a connection here, subtle but undeniable. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't about feelings of love, but it was something equally important: respect, understanding, and the quiet bond that comes from shared experience. For a while they sat in silence, watching the stars appear and the night settle over the ranch. The horse moved closer, sensing the calm between them, and she reached out to stroke its neck. It leaned into her hand, a soft nuzzle that spoke of trust. She realized that the trust extended beyond just the animal. It was a reflection of the trust growing between her and the cowboy. "You know," she said after a moment, "I never thought I'd find someone I could learn from. Not like this, Bess."
He smiled faintly. Sometimes the right person comes along when you're focused on something else entirely.
And sometimes the lesson isn't what you expected. She laughed quietly. A soft, warm sound. I guess that's true. As the night grew darker, they made their way back to the corral, checking on the horses one last time. The air was cool, and the stars shone brightly overhead. There was a sense of peace, a quiet satisfaction that came from a day well spent, a challenge met, and a bond formed. She realized that she had changed slightly over the course of the day. She had faced her fears, let someone in, and discovered a quiet strength in trust and understanding. And she could see that he too had shown her something valuable. Lessons not just in working with animals, but in seeing the value of patience, care, and respect. As she finally prepared to leave, the cowboy looked at her, his expression calm but thoughtful. "You did well today," he said simply.
"More than you know."
She felt the warmth in her chest at his words. "Thank you," she said softly. I learned a lot, and I appreciate your patience." He nodded, acknowledging her words without fanfare.
Patience goes both ways.
You showed courage too. That matters just as much. Bah. She smiled, feeling a sense of connection that lingered even as she walked away. The evening had been more than she had anticipated. It had been a lesson in trust, patience, and human understanding, and it had created a quiet bond that neither of them would forget. As the night settled over the ranch, the woman returned home with a sense of calm and reflection. She thought about the day, the lessons learned, and the unusual but meaningful connection she had formed with a stranger. Phew! She realized that moments like these were rare, moments that challenged her, taught her, and left her with a sense of hope and understanding. And somewhere in her heart, she knew that the cowboy, quiet and strong, would remain in her thoughts, a reminder of the power of patience, respect, and trust, the kind that could bridge even the widest of gaps. The next morning, the ranch was bathed in the soft glow of early sunlight. The dew on the grass sparkled like tiny diamonds, and a cool breeze carried the fresh scent of the open land. The Apache woman arrived at the corral earlier than usual, eager to see the horses and check on the one that had been injured. She moved quietly, careful not to startle any of the animals. The cowboy was already there, tending to the horses with the same calm precision he had shown the day before. His movements were steady and confident, yet gentle. But as she watched him, she realized how much she had come to respect not just his skill, but the care he put into every action. The injured horse stood nearby, moving more confidently now, its legs strong and steady. It nuzzled her hand as she approached.
Good morning, he greeted, looking up with a small smile. Looks like someone's feeling better today.
Much better. Thanks to you. He shook his head slightly, modestly. We did it together. You helped him just as much as I did. There was a quiet understanding between them, a shared respect that had grown stronger over the past 2 days. The woman realized that their bond, formed through patience and trust, had deepened. It was subtle, almost unspoken, but it was there.
She felt a warmth in her chest, a recognition of the connection that had developed between them. Do you want to see how he's moving now? He asked, gesturing toward a small path that led from the corral to the nearby hills.
It's a good test to make sure he's fully healed, she agreed, curious to see the horse in motion. They walked together, the animal trotting beside them with a confidence it hadn't shown before. The cowboy's presence seemed to reassure the horse, and she noticed how he moved beside it, guiding it gently, never forcing it to do more than it could handle. See how he's walking? He asked. No limping, no hesitation. He's strong again. She watched closely, her eyes filled with admiration.
You've done an amazing job, she said softly. I can't believe how patient you are.
Most people would have rushed or forced him. He smiled faintly, looking at her. Patience works better than force. It builds trust. That's what matters most. As they continued along the path, she noticed something else, how the horse responded not just to his commands but to his presence. There was a calmness that radiated from him, a quiet confidence that made the horse feel safe. She realized that this was not just skill, it was understanding, respect, and care all combined. Can I try something? She asked, a hint of curiosity in her voice. Of course, he replied. She stepped forward, placing her hand gently on the horse's neck. The animal flinched slightly, but then relaxed as she mimicked the careful movements he had shown her. She felt a sense of pride and accomplishment as the horse began to move confidently, guided by her hands.
You're doing well, he said, his voice calm and encouraging.
Remember, it's about trust, not force. She nodded, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. She had learned so much in just 2 days, not only about handling the horse, but about patience, understanding, and the value of trust. And she realized that these lessons applied to life in general, not just to animals. After a while, they reached a small hill overlooking the ranch. The view was breathtaking, with the sun casting golden light over the open land and the horses grazing peacefully below. They stood together in silence, taking in the scene, a quiet companionship forming between them.
You know, she said after a moment, I never thought I'd learn so much in such a short time. Not just about horses, but about life, I guess.
He looked at her, his eyes calm and thoughtful. Sometimes the lessons come when you least expect them. And sometimes it takes someone else to show you what you didn't realize you needed to see.
She smiled softly, feeling the truth in his words.
I guess that's true. I've learned to trust not just the horse, but you, in a way. Bay. And that's not easy for me. Trust isn't always easy. It takes time, patience, and respect. You've shown all of those things yourself. There was a quiet moment of reflection between them, a sense of mutual respect and understanding that went deeper than words. But she realized that their bond, though formed quickly, was meaningful. It was built on shared experiences, patience, and a willingness to learn from one another. As they began to walk back toward the corral, the woman noticed how confident the horse had become. It moved with a steady gait, no sign of hesitation or fear. She reached out to stroke its neck, feeling the strength and trust in its movements. "You've done it," she said softly, turning to the cowboy. "He's fully healed. And I feel like I've learned something too."
He smiled, a quiet, satisfied expression.
Good. That's the most important part.
Fast. Not just fixing the horse, but learning something along the way.
They returned to the corral, checking the other horses and ensuring everything was in order.
The Apache woman realized how much she had come to respect this man, not just for his skill with the animals, but for his patience, kindness, and quiet strength. He had shown her that true strength was not about force or pride, but about understanding, respect. As the morning turned into midday, she prepared to leave, feeling a sense of gratitude and reflection. She had come to the ranch expecting a routine check on the horses, and she was leaving with much more, a deeper understanding of patience, trust, and human connection. "Thank you for everything," she said softly, looking at him. "I've learned more than I could have imagined." He nodded, his expression calm. "Bay, you did well too. You've got courage and patience yourself. Remember that." She smiled, feeling the weight of his words. There was something comforting in the simplicity of their interaction, in the mutual respect and understanding they had developed. She realized that moments like this were rare, and that the lessons learned would stay with her for a long time. Bank. As she walked away, the horse following her quietly, she felt a sense of calm and satisfaction. She had faced challenges, learned new skills, and discovered a meaningful connection with someone she had only just met. Psst. And she knew that this experience had changed her in subtle but important ways. The cowboy watched her go, feeling a quiet sense of fulfillment. It wasn't just about helping the horse. It was about guiding someone, sharing knowledge, and forming a connection built on respect and trust. He understood that the bond they had created, though simple and unspoken, was meaningful and lasting. By the time she reached the edge of the ranch, the sun was high in the sky, and the land was alive with warmth and light. She paused for a moment, looking back at the corral and the cowboy standing there. She felt a wave of gratitude and respect, knowing that this encounter had left a mark on her life.
"I'll never forget this day," she said softly to herself, a smile touching her lips.
Bed.
Not just the horse, but everything I've learned.
The cowboy returned to his work, checking the horses and preparing for the day ahead. Yet, in his mind, he carried the memory of their shared moments, the patience, the trust, and the quiet bond that had formed between them.
He knew that such connections, though rare, were the ones that mattered most.
As the day continued, both the Apache woman and the cowboy went about their tasks, each carrying the lessons learned and the respect earned.
They had faced challenges, learned from one another, and created a bond that, though subtle, was strong and lasting. By evening, the ranch was calm once more, the sun setting behind the distant hills. The horses rested peacefully, and the air was filled with a sense of quiet contentment. The woman returned home, her heart lighter and her mind filled with reflection. She had discovered that trust and understanding could bridge gaps even between strangers, and that patience and respect were powerful tools in both life and work. And somewhere on the ranch, the cowboy looked out over the land, feeling a sense of quiet satisfaction. He had shared his knowledge, formed a connection, and helped someone see the value of patience and trust. It was a simple day, yet it had left both of them changed, wiser, and more aware of the strength found in care, understanding, and respect. Apache woman would remember the cowboy, not just for his skill with horses, but for the quiet lessons he had taught her about life. And he, in turn, would remember her courage, resilience, and willingness to learn, proof that even brief encounters could leave a lasting impact. As night fell, the ranch settled into silence, the horses resting under the stars. And in that quiet, both the woman and the cowboy carried with them a memory of a day filled with trust, learning, and the subtle, enduring power of human connection.